A warm welcome to all my dear 5th standard children. Today we are going to learn about the 5th part from your the earth, sun and the moon chapter, right? So, in the first 4 parts you have learned the internal structure, sun, moon and artificial satellites, right? So, in the 5th part you are going to learn about eclipse. Is it very interesting? Yes. So, in this part, you are going to learn what is eclipse and what are the types of eclipse, right? Now, what is eclipse? We all know that sun is the source of light, right? So, it gives out heat as well as it gives out light, right? Now, so sun is called as a source of light. When we say the earth and the moon, they are not the source of, they does not have its own light. So, they are called as opaque objects. You know what is opaque objects, right? The objects that does not give out light, okay, that does not pass out light are called as opaque objects, right? So, earth and moon are called as opaque objects, right? When the sunlight passes, right? When there is a light that passes during that time, when an opaque object comes in the path of a light, okay, it casts a shadow. For example, if you take a torch and you glow the torch and in between the torch, you just show the ball, either any football or anything in front of the torch. So, the light of the torch is blocked by the football, right? Because football is an opaque object, the opaque objects will not pass out the light, right? The same way, here the sun gives out light. Once it gives out light, these opaque objects can come in the path of the light. So, sometimes the earth will block the light or sometimes the moon will block the light, right? So, here we can say the moon revolves around the earth, right? So, when the moon blocks in the path of the light, thereby the shadow is formed, right? So, the shadow falls on the earth, right? So, this type of eclipse is known as solar eclipse, and when the earth blocks the sunlight whereas the shadow falls on the moon, so that eclipse we call it as lunar eclipse. So, these are the two types of eclipse. So, what are the two types of eclipse? One is solar eclipse and the other one is lunar eclipse. So, during this time, sometimes the moon or the earth comes in straight line, during that time the shadow will be formed. So, this is known as eclipse, right. So, now first we will see what is solar eclipse. So, here you can see this is the sun, right. So, the sun will not move, the sun is in the center of the solar system, right. So, and we know that the moon revolves around the earth, right. Now, at a point or sometimes at times the moon, earth and sun come in a straight line, right. So, during that time the sunlight is blocked, the light of the sun is blocked by the moon, where the shadow of the moon falls on the earth, right. So, the part of the earth that receives that shadow cannot be able to visibly see the sun, right, because the sun is blocked by the moon. Sometimes this solar eclipse can be total or it can be partial. What is total? What is partial means? When the moon is completely blocked, right. So, when the sun is completely blocked by the moon, so this is known as total solar eclipse. So, where the part of the earth people cannot be able to visibly see the sun completely, right. So, that part is known as total solar eclipse. And some part of the earth, they can see some part of the sun. The moon cannot be completely blocked, right? So, they can able to see some part of the sun, right? So, that we call it as partial solar eclipse, right? Now, let us see what is solar eclipse. So, here you can see the sun, earth and the moon is blocked. The moon is completely blocking the light of the sun. So, now let us see here, you can see here. So, when the moon is like this, where we can see some part of the sun. So, this is known as partial solar eclipse. When the moon is completely blocked, it is known as total solar eclipse, right? When during this solar eclipse, okay, the shadow will be formed, I told you, right? So, here we can say the sunlight falls on the moon, whereas the light is blocked by the moon and the moon shadow. We know that many opaque objects comes in the path of the light, it casts its shadow, right? So, the shadow of the moon falls on the earth, right? So, this part, the part where the moon is completely blocking the sunlight. So, that shadow is known as umbra. Okay. So, this part we call it as umbra. U-M-B-R-A. Right. So, umbra is nothing but the part of the shadow that is completely blocked. Okay. And the other one is known as penumbra. So, this part is known as penumbra. The part of the shadow that totally blocks the light is known as umbra, and the part of the light that is partially, okay, you can see the shadow. So, that is known as penumbra. Okay. Right? Are you clear with umbra and penumbra? So, umbra means completely the light is blocked and the shadow will be formed. Okay. The shadow will be darker, right, when compared with penumbra. Some part of sunlight that falls in the penumbra region. Okay. So, this is penumbra and this dark shadow is known as umbra. So, during this time the shadow is there are two types of shadow will be formed. One is umbra, the other one is penumbra, right. So, this part of the earth people cannot be able to visibly see the sun. So, they will have the total solar eclipse, and the part of the people who are here on the earth, so they can see some part of the sun. So, they receive the partial solar eclipse. So, in Tamil they will simply say Surya Grahanam, they will say, right. Yes, that is what. Now, you learnt about solar eclipse. Now, let us see about lunar eclipse. So, usually the solar eclipse occur during the daytime or mostly on a new moon day. Okay. But the lunar eclipse occur during the full moon, night of the full moon day. Okay. Right. What is lunar eclipse? So, lunar eclipse is nothing but when the earth is blocked, right. So, the earth comes between the moon and the sun. So, solar eclipse is the moon comes between the sun and earth, but the solar eclipse is known as earth comes between the sun and the moon. So, here you can see the sunlight that falls on the earth. Sometimes at a straight line, when it comes in a straight line, the earth completely blocks the sunlight where the shadow of the earth falls on the moon, right. So, here you can see so, this is sun, earth and moon. So, when the moon comes here straightly, okay, so the sunlight falls on the earth, thereby the earth is blocking the path of the sunlight and the earth shadow is formed on the moon. The earth shadow will fall on the moon, right. So, here also you can see the shadow is of two types, okay. One is umbra, the other one is penumbra, okay. So, now let us see lunar eclipse. So, here the sunlight falls on the earth and the shadow of the earth falls on the moon, right. So, this part is known as umbra. So, this part is known as umbra. So, umbra is nothing but the part of shadow that totally blocks. The part of the shadow, this is the part of the shadow where it totally blocks the light, okay. This one is penumbra. So, this is penumbra. Here also you can see the penumbra. So, penumbra is the part that blocks some part of the light, okay. So, this is penumbra and this is umbra, right. So, here also the shadow is of two types. One is umbra where the light is completely blocked and the penumbra. So, in penumbra some part of the light is visible, okay, right. So, this is what about lunar eclipse. So, here in lunar eclipse also we can see there are two types of lunar eclipse. One is total lunar eclipse, the other one is partial lunar eclipse. So, sometimes the earth completely blocks the sunlight. So, thereby it forms total lunar eclipse. So, completely the moon receives the shadow, right. So, this is known as total lunar eclipse. Sometimes the earth will not be completely blocked, okay, but the shadow will be formed, the some part of the sunlight that falls on the moon, right. So, that is known as partial lunar eclipse. So, mostly the lunar eclipse occur during the night of the full moon day, okay. So, this lunar eclipse, what is solar eclipse, what is lunar eclipse is your 2-mark question, as well as you have a diagram also. So, about solar eclipse and lunar eclipse you have to explain, and if they ask in 1 mark what is umbra, what is penumbra, what is total lunar eclipse or total solar eclipse or partial lunar eclipse or partial solar eclipse, and what is eclipse. So, like this when they ask questions you have to answer correctly, right. And diagram part, you have two diagrams. One is lunar eclipse, you have to draw and mark the sun, earth, moon, umbra, penumbra. The same way in solar eclipse you have to draw the sun, moon, earth, umbra, penumbra, everything, right. So, this is your Roman diagram Roman also, right. So, go through this lesson. So, today in this class you learned what is solar eclipse, what is lunar eclipse, what is umbra, what is penumbra, and you learnt about the total and partial solar and lunar eclipse, right. So, go through all this and take your book and read the given chapter, that is the topic, right. Fine. So, I hope this part will be very interesting for you. So, refer the notes and whatever the study material that has been attached along with this video, take that study material and copy in your science subject note. So, after you copy, read from your science subject note. So, once you are thorough with the lesson, take the self-assessment and do the self-assessment. So, once you do the self-assessment, you will come to know whether you have thoroughly understood about the chapter. So, hope I will meet you with the next chapter. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.